Hello, and thank you for joining us. I am so happy to see so many of you here from different areas. Let me know in the comments section who you are and where you come from. Also include your professional background as well. I know we have some mental health professionals, but there's also a few medical professionals and educators in the virtual room as well. Also, make sure to download and use your workbook that we sent you in the email to follow along as we address the top 5 myths about Muslims. One of the reasons for today's webinar is that I'm so passionate about helping and supporting you as service providers for Muslims in any way that I can, so that you can in turn help my community, a community that is often neglected and ignored, to get the help that they need. There is a huge need for mental and medical services within the Muslim community by professionals that are trained in providing culturally competent services. Sadly, there isn't much available in terms of training for providers in the areas of cultural specific training when it comes to Muslims. There's also so much negativity and false information coming from the media and online websites posing as legitimate educational sites with a hidden anti-Muslim agenda that it becomes difficult to sort through the false and misleading information and get clarity about the Muslim individual and the community as a whole. My goal is to reach and educate as many non-Muslim providers as possible, but also provide you with an opportunity to take advantage of this time together to get your questions answered. Share with me your struggles and ask me your questions about the Muslim individual or families that you serve. Also, if you stay with me until the end, I'll talk about how you can get your hands on the Top 25 Resources Guide with Muslims. Although I will not be able to answer all of your questions directly on air, we will try to get to all of your questions in the comment section. My assistant is on hand to answer your questions directly. Now, before we get started, I wanted to take a moment and introduce myself and tell you a little bit about who I am and how I got started with this training. My name is Nafisa Sekandari, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and director of mental health for Muslims.com. I'm also a trainer for providers who work with Muslims. I've been teaching service providers how to provide culturally competent services to the Muslim community since 2014, but I've also been directly working with Muslims as a psychologist since 2001. As a licensed clinical psychologist and director of mental health for Muslims.com, I've helped hundreds of professionals from diverse fields such as medical, educational, mental health, and interfaith religious groups to improve their service delivery with Muslims, a group many were working with but lacked cultural and religious understanding to best meet their needs. When you have training and a deeper understanding about the cultural and religious background of a Muslim individual, you can confidently and effectively provide services that connect you to your patients in a way that makes your treatment plan way more effective and beneficial. Once you know how to take into consideration the diversity of culture and religious practice within the Muslim community, you will be more successful in your treatment and service delivery. That's what this training is about. This training is an opportunity for you to learn more about the cultural and religious background of the patients you serve. Today we will address the common top 5 myths that people tend to believe about Muslims. We will talk about the myth that Muslims are foreign to the United States and the West in general. We will address the belief that the Muslim values are at odds with American or Western values. We will also get into the myth that Muslims follow a different God than Christians or Jews. A very popular myth is that the majority of Muslims are Arabs, as well as the belief that Islam oppresses women. The one that's important to me is the belief that Muslims don't value education. For the myth where Muslims are considered foreign to the United States, Muslims have actually been part of the United States history since the beginning. The United States also had good relations with Muslim countries in their early stages of establishment. Morocco was the first country to recognize the United States as a country. Thomas Jefferson held the first iftar dinner for his guests from Tunisia during the month of Ramadan. Hillary Clinton restarted the iftar dinner during the time of Bill Clinton's presidency. Thomas Jefferson's copy of the Quran continues to be used in the swearing-in ceremonies of Muslim politicians. Muslims have been fighting for the United States military since the time of George Washington. Babid Muhammad was just one of the Muslims who served in George Washington's army between 1775 and 1783. Hundreds of Muslims fought in the War of 1812 and later in the Civil War. Many of the slaves brought in from Africa were also Muslims. The American founding fathers specifically mentioned Islam in their writings promising religious freedom. In 1935, Prophet Muhammad was honored in the chambers of the United States Supreme Court as one of the greatest lawgivers of history. So as you can see, Islam and Muslims are not new to the history of the United States. As for Europe, although the majority of Muslim communities have been established in the last century, Islam has a long history in Europe as well. Currently, the Balkans continue to have a very large population of native Muslims, and there's a large population of Muslims in Eastern Europe. The Moors have had a significant presence in Spain, Portugal, southern Italy, and Malta. Muslims have been part of the European history as well. For the myth that the religion of Muslims is very different than Christianity and Judaism, the truth is Muslims believe in the very same God as Christians and Jews. In fact, Muslims believe all three religions are the same religion and message that God has taught to different messengers and prophets since the time of Adam. In Islam, the Quran states that there have been over 124,000 prophets since the beginning of time, but only 25 are mentioned in the Quran. Out of those 25, only 5 are elevated above the rest, such as Abraham, Noah, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon them all. Muslims are taught to believe in all of these prophets and love them equally. Jesus is highly regarded in Islam, and Mary is the only woman with her own chapter in the Quran. Also important to note that in Arab-speaking countries, all three religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam use the same word Allah for God. It can be confusing listening to the prayers in Arabic while in church, as they sound so similar to prayers in a mosque. Muslims are taught that there is no distinction between the three religions in Islam, and only piety and religious commitment sets the practicing individuals apart. Yes, there are differences, such as Muslims do not believe Jesus is the Son of God and do not believe he was crucified on the cross, but rather saved and taken up to heaven while being alive. But then there are certain Christians who have similar beliefs as well. At the core, the three religions have more in common than they are different. For the third myth, we address the belief that the majority of Muslims are Arabs. The truth is, only 20% of Muslims in the United States are from Saudi Arabia. Arabs don't even make up the bulk of Muslims internationally. The majority of Muslims live in Indonesia and not Saudi Arabia. Muslim Americans come from at least 77 different countries and speak over 60 different languages. The ethnic breakdown of Muslims in the United States is 30% white, 23% black, 21% Asian, 6% Hispanic, and 19% other races. The convert population is on the rise as well. So as you can see, there is great diversity within the Muslim community and a great mix of ethnicities. It's difficult to generalize within the Muslim community due to this diversity. The most common myth surrounding Muslims is that Islam oppresses women. Islam actually elevated the status of women over 1400 years ago. Around the birth of Islam, the Quraysh tribe, the tribe Prophet Muhammad was born into, were practicing female infanticide. Families were encouraged to bury female babies alive due to their preference for male births. Since they were a warring tribe and male soldiers were in short supply, the preference for male babies encouraged the practice. Islam put an end to female infanticide after Prophet Muhammad began receiving revelations and elevated the status and treatment of women. Over 1400 years ago, women were given the right to choose who they married. They were permitted to divorce, to inherit property, and to vote, a right women in the United States didn't have until 100 years ago. They had the right to work outside the home and to keep the money they made without having to contribute it to the household income. I've had several people ask me about the hijab or head covering with Muslim women. Many assume those who wear the head covering are oppressed. Although there are some Muslim families that force their daughters or wives to wear the hijab and cover, for the most part, though, the women choose to cover as a symbol of their religion or choosing who gets to see them uncovered. We have 2 Muslim politicians in the United States, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. Both Muslim, but one covers and wears the hijab and the other doesn't. I have family members that cover and the majority do not. There are various reasons for this, and due to time, I won't get into it, but I cover this in more detail in my in-depth training, Cultural Competent Service Delivery with Muslims, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. Sadly, there continues to be associations of oppression towards women in Muslim households due to cultural interpretations of the Quran. Many countries, as well as individuals, take verses of the Quran out of context and use it to control the female population. As has always been the universal case historically, the best way to control a society is to control its women. This is why women have been oppressed around the world, regardless of religion. So Islam doesn't oppress women, but societies do. The last myth has to do with the belief that Muslims don't value education. Although Prophet Muhammad remained illiterate his whole life, he stressed the importance of education for every Muslim man and woman. The very first revelation in the Quran was the word Iqra, which means to read. Although Islam emphasizes the importance of education, some Muslim families choose to ignore this, mostly for girls. I'm sure many of you have heard of Malala Yousafzai, the girl who was shot by the Taliban in Pakistan due to her passion for education, specifically for girls. She has since survived and moved on to fight for the education of girls around the world, and by her 18th birthday had built several schools for girls. The fact is, Muslims are one of the most educated communities around the world. In the United States alone, more than 10% of all doctors are Muslim. We have Muslims in every profession, from business, entertainment, sports, to politicians and community organizers. So to recap what we learned so far, Muslims have been part of the United States and European history for centuries. Although we're recently hearing more about Muslims in the media, remember that Muslims have had a long history in the United States as well as Europe. Also, Muslims believe in the same God as Christians and Jews. There are far too many commonalities than differences between religions, and understanding these commonalities help you to make connections with your patients. We also learned that not all Muslims are Arabs. There is great diversity within the Muslim community, and you won't always know someone is a Muslim just by looking at them or based on their name. This recently happened to me. I was at a very large conference and didn't know anyone. I met a woman I connected with, and we ended up sitting together. As I was talking to another woman sitting on my other side and telling her about my work with Muslims, the first woman heard me and said, "Hey, I'm Muslim too." Come to find out, she had converted 10 years ago. I never would have known she was Muslim based on how she looked or by her name. The next myth we addressed was the oppression of women in Islam. Islam as a religion actually elevated the status of women and liberated women, but that has not stopped individuals and communities from abusing and oppressing women. The issue of the oppression of women is universal, and societies often control women when they want to control a population. The last myth we covered was the belief that Muslims don't value education. As mentioned before, there is a high emphasis towards education in Islam, and Muslims are one of the most educated and highly employed communities in the West. Including Muslims in your practice and service delivery makes good financial sense. So if you've enjoyed learning about Muslims and would like to go deeper in your understanding of the culture and religion, as well as how to provide effective yet culturally appropriate treatment to your Muslim patients, I invite you to join me to learn more about my online training program, Culturally Competent Service Delivery with Muslims. If you're interested in learning more about how you can further your training and your work with Muslims, I'd now like to talk about this training opportunity. This very comprehensive training program has been years in the making. As the only Muslim licensed clinical psychologist in Arizona, I have been asked by multiple organizations throughout Arizona to present on cultural competency with Muslims. I have since presented to groups as small as university intern groups to large state conferences. I have presented to groups from the mental health field to medical, educational, corrections, and interfaith religious groups. As a result of my training since 2014, hundreds of non-Muslim providers have felt empowered and confident in their service delivery with Muslims. That wasn't the case when I myself first started working with Muslims back in 2001. Despite being Muslim myself, I wasn't empowered in my service delivery when working with Muslims. I used to believe simply being Muslim was enough to be a good service provider with Muslims. I quickly learned that wasn't so. There's so much diversity within the Muslim community that I couldn't just generalize from my own religious and cultural background. As mentioned before, Muslims are one of the most diverse groups in the United States, second only to the Seventh-day Adventists. I wasn't prepared in how that diversity would impact my own service delivery. Muslims, like many other ethnic groups, suffer from typical mental health disorders such as depression and anxiety, as well as substance abuse and marital difficulties. Also, like many other groups, there is a reluctance to seek mental health services due to the social stigma related to treatment. I had to learn to educate myself about the various cultural differences within the Muslim community. There was also diversity in religious practice outside the 5 pillars of Islam. For example, some people, as we talked earlier, choose to cover while others don't. And some always have to eat halal while others aren't so strict. Some families watch TV and listen to music while others strictly forbid it. The issue of homosexuality, dating, and drinking frequently came up in my session as well. I had to figure out how to handle those situations from an Islamic perspective. So when I'm asked, how are Muslims different than other groups in terms of service delivery, I have to share the journey that I've had to go through to improve my own service delivery with Muslims. Over the years, I've worked with thousands of Muslim patients, and due to trial and error, I've learned to pay attention to specific nuances that apply to Muslims. I naively assumed my being Afghan and Muslim was all that was needed as qualification to work with Muslims. At the time, I didn't consider the significance cultural background would have on the religious views and practices of individual Muslims. I was frequently reminded that Muslims from China did not present the same as Muslims in Africa. Muslims in Afghanistan presented differently than Muslims from Pakistan. And European Muslim converts will present differently than Bedouin Arab Muslims. The African American Muslim community wants to differentiate themselves from the Arab Muslim community, despite sharing common religious practices. Being one of the longest-standing groups in the United States, African Americans have their own unique way of combining culture and religion. Islam as a religion allows for integration of cultural practice, which leads to much diversity between cultures. In working with Muslims, I quickly realized that there are specific social and cultural rules to consider, such as dietary rules, medication compliance, modesty and privacy, familial expectations, as well as the impact of immigration and forced migration due to war. Having been raised in the United States since the age of 9, there are a lot of rules specific to certain Muslim cultures that even I wasn't aware of. The learning curve has been steep for me as a Muslim, but I know non-Muslims can feel overwhelmed by all the intricate details required to providing culturally competent services to the Muslim community. Despite my initial limitations working with the Muslim population, after September 11, 2001, I decided to leave my job as a school psychologist and pursue my doctorate in clinical psychology so that I could provide more direct services to Muslim individuals outside the school settings. Given the tense political climate towards Muslims after 9/11, Muslims were struggling with hate crimes, job discrimination, bullying, and harassment. There was constant negative information in the media about Muslims and Islam on a daily basis. Many suffered and complained to family and friends, but would not seek mental health treatment. I quickly found out about the social stigma related to mental illness within the community. I was viewing the problem as a Westerner and couldn't understand why someone would rather suffer than seek help. I had to change my thinking so that I could help my community. One of the ways I shifted my thinking was to educate the community about mental illness in a confidential yet unthreatening way. My solution was starting my website, mentalhealthformuslims.com. The aim of the website was to present mental illness from a Quranic and Islamic foundation, but also introducing Western terminology related to mental illness. Our website became very popular and the articles were read by thousands of people around the world. One article in particular was shared over 1 million times around the globe. There was a huge need for the discussion of mental illness within the Muslim community. But back in 2009, few Muslims were addressing the mental health needs of the Muslim community. Thankfully, all that has changed now that there are many Muslim mental health organizations doing what we started so many years ago. I have since realized that although I was concerned about the mental health needs of the Muslim community, I was missing the fact that there weren't many Muslim mental health professionals to meet these needs. Again, thankfully that has changed since so many more Muslims have been going into the mental health field. This was not the case when I enrolled in my doctorate program back in 2003. My family and friends were certainly not supportive of my choice to become a clinical psychologist. But many other families were also discouraging their children from going into the mental health field due to the stigma around mental illness. There are now amazing Muslim mental health professionals at every level, from psychiatry and psychology to marriage and family therapy and social work. We also have drug counselors, life coaches, professors, and teachers. This is all so exciting, but we still don't have enough practitioners to meet the needs of the Muslim community. For this reason, I started training non-Muslim professionals to provide culturally competent therapeutic services to Muslim individuals. Many were already working with Muslims, but didn't feel confident in their ability to best meet the cultural needs of their patients. During my live training presentations with hundreds of professionals, I have had the opportunity to better understand what the providers were struggling with in their work with the Muslim community. Many just didn't have a good understanding about the Muslim culture or religious practices due to so much negative information about Muslims in the news. Many practitioners had questions about Islam and wanted to better understand the religious implications as it pertained to the treatment of women or children. Some wanted to know about Sharia law and how that impacts their own lives in the West. Some were just curious about the veiling practices of women. Many wanted to know about the rights of women in Islam, since so much has been discussed in the media about the oppression of women, specifically in countries like Afghanistan or Pakistan. This is one of the reasons we covered this as a myth during today's webinar. What I found out during these presentations is how many people felt they lacked a clear understanding about working with Muslims and therefore avoided providing services to an entire ethnic and religious group as a result. As a director of mentalhealthformuslims.com, I've had the opportunity to hear from thousands of Muslim readers who have shared with me their struggles dealing with mental illness. Many have shared not having access to trained mental health professionals to help them deal with their illnesses. The emails, along with my own personal experience of providing therapeutic services to the Muslim community, led to the realization of there not being enough Muslim providers to meet the needs of the 3.45 million Muslims in the United States and the 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. Now, you might be saying, I don't directly work with Muslims, but the question I often ask is, how would you know if a Muslim was to come to your office or workplace? As I mentioned earlier, I myself have been caught off guard on a few occasions. Due to my website, mentalhealthformuslims.com, I assumed everyone that comes to my office finds me through my online presence and knows that I'm a Muslim. Yet one day, I was in the middle of an initial intake interview with a new patient, and I came to the religious affiliation section of her paperwork. I noticed she had checked Muslim as her religion. This surprised me because not only did she have a very common first and last name, such as Lisa Smith, but she was also very Western in her appearance. This sounds like I'm stereotyping, but because she was Caucasian and had blonde hair, I wasn't expecting a Muslim. I remember chuckling to myself and thinking I should know better, but yet here I was, caught off guard. As you see, just as when I was at the conference, this happens pretty frequently. I know logically there's great diversity within the Muslim community. There's a large white, Black, and Latin convert population in the West. But because I wasn't expecting to see a Muslim, I was caught off guard. What surprised me next was her surprise that I was a Muslim. Initially, she was very guarded and nervous about being in therapy, but instantly relaxed once she realized the issues that she presented with would be understood and her culture and religious background would be taken into consideration in therapy. So, you may not have a practice that targets the Muslim community, but you could still be caught off guard with a Muslim in your office and not be prepared to help them from a culturally competent place. When we have training to work with specific cultures, we feel more confident in our service delivery. When I started my training as a school psychologist at San Diego State University, my professor and program director at the time, Dr. Valerie Cook-Morales, was passionate about cultural competency. The San Diego State University counseling program at the time was one of the top master's level programs in the country for school psychology due to this emphasis on cultural competency for students. Dr. Cook-Morales worked hard to get grants for students to fully immerse themselves in the cultures that they grew up in. For students from Mexican backgrounds, she would send them to Mexico. For those from China, she would send them back to China. She couldn't send me back to my home country of Afghanistan due to the political instability at the time, so she sent me to Egypt so I could learn all I could about the Muslim culture. She also sent me to every culturally appropriate training available at the time, just so I could be well-versed in my own culture. Additionally, Dr. Cook Morales emphasized the need for cultural navigation with other cultures. She encouraged us to learn from each other about the cultural experiences different than our own. Thanks to her training, after graduation, I felt confident working with diverse cultures, regardless of background. I want you to feel confident in your service delivery and understand the needs of the Muslim individuals from a cultural and religious perspective. Even if you think you will never work with Muslims as a group, a Muslim individual might come through your doors and you may not know initially. By learning about the Muslim community and understanding their struggles through their religion and cultural background, you can feel more confident and competent in providing services to Muslim individuals. You will feel more comfortable working with Muslims and meeting the specific needs of the individuals you're serving in a more comprehensive way. By understanding the Muslim community in terms of their religion and culture, you will also be able to expand your practice by expanding your service delivery to a population that, for the most part, is highly educated and financially stable. So even if you typically don't work with Muslims, there is a chance that a Muslim could require your services, and you might end up not being prepared to understand their concerns from a religious or cultural perspective. Some people have fears of working with Muslims due to so much negativity about Muslims in the news. Just like we mentioned earlier when addressing the myths, many aren't aware of the fact that Muslims have been part of the United States and European history for centuries. By gaining a deeper understanding about the religious and cultural practices of Muslims, you can feel comfortable and confident in your service delivery with Muslims. The question I'd like to ask right now is, what if you could expand your practice, diversify your client base, and earn more money, all while feeling confident and competent in your service delivery? Would you be interested in learning how to improve your service delivery with Muslims from the comfort of your own home? If you're interested in deepening your understanding of the Muslim culture and religion, I'd like to again invite you to join me for my online training program, Culturally Competent Service Delivery with Muslims. This training has been 5 years in the making, and it's the most detailed and comprehensive online training available for service providers who work with Muslims. The training addresses the most commonly asked questions about working with Muslims. The goal of the training is to empower you to feel confident in your service delivery by teaching you all there is to know about working with Muslims in a culturally competent manner. The information in this training has also significantly helped me in my practice. Through my work with thousands of Muslims since 2001, I've learned some very important do's and don'ts in my work with Muslims. I'm also more mindful about the transference and countertransference that can take place in session with Muslims. We'll discuss this in more detail in the training. I now feel more comfortable talking about religion in sessions and encouraging the individuals and families to talk about how religion impacts their day-to-day interactions, even if they're not practicing themselves. I've learned to be more mindful of the diversity within the community and not paint all Muslims with the same wide brush. Making Muslims the focus of my practice has also opened doors for me I never knew I had. I was invited to present to the United States Health and Human Services Department in Washington, D.C. about the mental health needs of the Muslims. I was also invited to the White House not once, but twice. I've had the opportunity to present at conferences around the country and have met some amazing people as a result. I've also managed to increase my income and expand my practice. No, the majority of my patients are not Muslim. I have a very diverse mix of patients from all different backgrounds dealing with very diverse mental health issues, and I love that. I love how different each patient is. I love learning from them and having the opportunity to serve them. I wouldn't have had these opportunities if I didn't make cultural competency a priority in my training. One of my students from my live training classes was grateful about finally being able to understand the culture, history, and important factors to consider when addressing mental health concerns with Muslims. She says she found that aspect of the training to be an integral part of the diversity-specific training, in an aspect that she had not previously received specific training on. One of the most common questions that come up has to do with finding truthful information about Islam online. Due to the recent political and Islamophobic climate, there is a lot of false and negative information circulating about Islam as a religion and Muslims as the followers of Islam. Googling for factual information has also become difficult due to so many Islamophobic sites posing as legitimate educational sites. For this reason, a lot of people are confused about who the Muslims are and what the religion of Islam is all about. Due to this difficulty to easily find factual information about Muslims, I have since compiled over 5 years' worth of training material and put together this online training program that teaches you the most comprehensive and detailed information about the Muslim individual as well as the communities that they come from. Anyone working with Muslims, whether in business, hospitals, schools, prisons, clinical settings, or universities, could benefit from this training. Given the recent political climate, it's crucial we encourage dialogue for deeper understanding. This online training provides an opportunity to gain a deeper understanding about Islam as a monotheistic and Abrahamic faith and will cover similarities as well as differences between the three major religions of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. The training will also cover the history of Islam in the United States, which, as mentioned before, goes back as far as George Washington. You will also learn about the many contributions to the West by Muslims, such as the invention of the university, surgery, algebra, and even coffee. This is a big contrast to the Muslim narrative we hear so frequently today. Many people wonder about Sharia law. What is it and how does it impact non-Muslims in the West? We will cover that in the training as well as so much more. Most importantly, you will learn how to effectively work with Muslims by understanding the diversity within the community as well as the commonalities that bind them together. There are many do's and don'ts to consider. For example, should you talk about religion? How is homosexuality addressed in Islam? How should you deal with the overbearing parents and strict family and community guidelines? And how do you address the belief in dark magic and demonic possessions? My goal for this training is to empower you as a practitioner to feel confident providing services and interacting with people from a culture that, although has been part of the United States fabric since the beginning, seems unfamiliar and foreign to so many. In this very comprehensive training class, I've taken measures to ensure as complete and detailed understanding of the Muslim individual as possible. You will be better prepared to confidently interact and serve Muslim individuals from a culturally competent perspective. Since you've signed up for this webinar, either you are working with Muslims or have had past interactions with Muslims but want to enhance your skills to provide a more culturally competent service delivery. Whether you're a mental health professional, a medical doctor, or a classroom teacher, this training will help you feel confident and achieve culturally competent skills. So when you join my online training program, Culturally Competent Service Delivery with Muslims, you will get a comprehensive training about the best ways to help Muslims by first understanding a little bit about Islam and how that impacts the day-to-day lives of Muslims. I will walk you through the history of Islam in the United States and how that impacts the diversity within the Muslim community. As mentioned before, the Muslim community is one of the most diverse groups in the United States. This diversity makes it difficult to generalize among Muslims. It's important to know in what ways the Muslims are alike, as well as what makes them different. We are definitely going to cover a lot of ground, but by the end, you will gain a much deeper understanding of the Muslim individual and learn skills to provide services from a culturally competent perspective. This comprehensive training will be an amazing educational opportunity by itself. But I thought about how I could make this offer even better so that I could help you become the much-needed support for the Muslim community. I want to take you from just knowing how to work with Muslims to actually providing culturally competent services with your Muslim patients and clients. When you join the online training program, in addition to the training, you will also receive the PowerPoint slides associated with the training, as well as a downloadable MP3 audio for listening in the car or on the go. The Top 25 Resources Guide to Working with Muslims will also be included in the bonus material to deepen your knowledge and awareness of your work with Muslims. The resources offer great additional information about Islam and Muslims. After the program is over, you'll still have access to the videos and all the bonus material, so you'll be able to go back over the material at your leisure. You'll find that the ability to review the material as often as you like at your own convenience is simply priceless. That's very difficult to do when you're attending a live event. Not only is the presenter in a time crunch and has to rush through all this material, but you have to sit through a long presentation with limited breaks. As much as I enjoyed doing my live trainings, I was always feeling rushed to get through a lot of material in a very short time. People felt trapped and they felt they couldn't leave to take a break for fear of missing important information. Having the convenience of learning this information from the comfort of your own home means you don't have to take time out of your busy day to attend a training. You don't have to worry about scheduling conflicts and missing time with your patients. So by now, you're probably wondering what the cost for the online cultural competence service delivery with Muslim training will be. By purchasing this online masterclass training program, you will save time and money. Your investment for this very comprehensive training program is just $597. That's less than the cost of actually scheduling someone to come in and present for live presentations. That can typically run anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. With this online training program, you can create instant training for your staff or interns without scheduling conflicts. One of the challenges of putting together a live training program is the scheduling of the speaker. In ordering an online training program, there is no need to scramble to fit the availability of a speaker to your schedule, and there's no need to cover travel expenses. You can still offer this program for CE credits or train interns and staff in your organization at your convenience. The instant download can be viewed at your own pace and can be paused to take notes or breaks. The video can be made available for private viewing in the comfort of your own home. Additionally, you can increase the diversity in your caseload and expand your practice, therefore making you more money. Remember, if you want to improve your service delivery and be more confident in your work with Muslims, you have to invest in your training and gain a deeper understanding of the cultural and religious background of Muslims. If you're ready to invest in yourself and gain skills that will improve your service delivery with Muslims, then this program is for you. All you have to do is visit drsekandari.mykajabi.com/masterclass, and it will take you to a page with a summary of all I mentioned above, which includes the training video along with all the bonuses, including the top 25 resources guide. When you go to the order form, you have the opportunity to become certified and receive a certificate of completion to demonstrate your cultural competency in working with Muslims. You can use a certificate to include your training experience for the advertisement of your practice. So scroll down to see the payment option. Once you click the payment button, you will be directed to the order form. It will take less than 5 minutes for you to complete the order form, but once you do, you will get a confirmation email. But once you get that confirmation email, you will get your login details and you can get started on the training right away. The training video and all the bonuses will be waiting for you as well. So remember, as a bonus, this training will be available in video and audio format, and we'll have the slides and transcripts available for further review. In the training, I will teach you basic relevant information about the religion of Islam and how that impacts the lives of Muslims in terms of privacy, modesty, dietary needs, medication compliance, and cultural and religious beliefs about mental illness and treatment. I'll help you to provide culturally competent services to the Muslim community by talking about some do's and don'ts when working with Muslims. I've learned the hard way to be more aware of appropriate behavior when working with certain Muslim groups. I'll share how you can avoid making common mistakes such as how to talk to Muslims from diverse ethnic backgrounds and avoid generalizing among all Muslims. I'll also discuss how to treat those Muslims who believe in possessions and dark magic as a source of their illness. In addition to the training, you will also get the top 25 resources guide to further your knowledge and deepen your understanding of Islam and Muslims. Additionally, you will have the opportunity to become certified and receive a certificate of completion to demonstrate your skills when working with Muslims. As an added bonus, you will have the opportunity to join my private members-only Facebook group for service providers. You can use the group to ask questions and learn from other Muslim and non-Muslim providers. If you get stuck and need help, the group will be there for you. They have a lot of ideas and experiences to share with you. You'll be learning from myself as well as your peers. I will go on weekly to answer questions directly as well. We also offer a 30-day refund policy. The 30-day refund policy is contingent upon doing the work and demonstrating how the training was not helpful for you and your practice. So once again, are you ready to join me for this online training program? If you're ready to invest in your education and build your cultural competency with Muslims, then your next step is to visit drsekandari.mykajabi.com www.sekandari.com/masterclass and get registered for the online cultural competence service delivery with Muslims. You will be taken to a page that will summarize all that you will get, which includes the masterclass along with all your bonuses. Once you click the payment button, you will be directed to the order form. Give me a few minutes and I'll send you an email with your personal login code so you can get started right away. It's decision time. You can skip this opportunity to join the online cultural competence service delivery with Muslims and continue to have Muslims seek out your services and continue to not feel confident about your understanding of their background to provide effective services. Or you can commit to invest in your skills and improve your cultural competency, all while confidently diversifying your practice as a certified provider to work with Muslims and increasing your income at the same time. So the next time a Muslim individual or family walks into your office, you can be confident in your service delivery. Plus, we have a 30-day money-back guarantee where if you follow the program and can demonstrate to us that you learned nothing beneficial or new in this training, we will give you your money back. No problem. We feel so confident that you will gain a deeper understanding of the Muslim individual and the communities that they come from that we can make that guarantee. But should that not happen for whatever reason, you are covered with a 30-day money-back guarantee. It's the perfect time to invest in yourself and expand your skills. By expanding your practice, you can create opportunities for more business, which means more money. Click the button to enroll in this training program today. So now I'll address a few of the questions. Julie from California asks, I work with Muslims and having such a hard time with keeping track of cultural differences. It seems everyone has a different way of practicing Islam. Is this typical? Hi, Julie. Thank you for being here. As I mentioned before, Islam allows for the integration of culture in your religious practice, but this also creates a lot of confusion within the community as well. I am a Muslim and come from a Muslim family, but even I'm surprised by how different this can look with different groups. I now look for the commonalities while being aware of the differences. You can ask specific questions from the individual during the intake interview to get a better understanding of their outlook and perspective. Okay, Cindy from Florida is asking, how do I address domestic violence with my female patients? I don't want to assume Islam encourages domestic violence, but I also want to make sure my patients are safe. Hi, Cindy. Thank you for being here. My answer to that is to deal with domestic violence or physical violence of any type, whether with children or adults, the same way you would with any other culture. You should report the child abuse to the authorities, and you should ensure the safety and security of the woman in the same way you would with any other individual, regardless of cultural or religious background. When it comes to Muslims, you can also take the opportunity to educate them about what domestic violence looks like, what the pattern is, and how it will not change simply by the woman cooking better or cleaning better. There also needs to be direct intervention and involvement by her family and his family. Sometimes the victims might not even know that they're in a domestic violence situation until someone points it out for them. I spend a lot of time educating my female patients, Muslim and non-Muslim, about the cycle of domestic violence and how regardless of how beautiful, smart, or educated the woman is, she can easily get caught up in the cycle if she's not aware of it. So treat it as you would any other situation and provide support and education to the victims. Fatima from Virginia would like to know about addressing teens that want to stop practicing their religion. Hi, Fatima. Thank you for your question. This is a huge issue with our youth. I feel our mosques are failing the youth because they are not speaking their language. I myself wanted to get as far away from Islam as possible when I was a teen because of how religion was used to control me. I was not taught the whole of the religion, but pieces were drilled into me as a fear tactic to keep me on the right path. What I learned later when I decided to learn more about Islam as an adult was that the Quran had all I needed to know to be a good person and stay on the right path without using fear as a way to do it. I also became inspired by other Muslims who lived balanced and whole lives and easily and effortlessly managed to go between the mainstream culture and the Muslim culture without conflict. Islam is all about balance and moderation, but some families and Islamic institutions make it so restricted and severe that they take the beauty and balance out of the religion. Encourage the kids to find Islam for themselves and then make that decision. Have them talk to Muslims they admire who can guide them towards a better understanding of their religion that is not mosque-based. I hope that makes sense and addresses your question. Nicole from Arizona works with refugees and has trouble distinguishing culture from migration. She says she sees behavior that seems passive and reserved, but she's not sure if it's due to modesty with culture or fear due to migration. Hi, Nicole. Thank you for the question. You're here in my neck of the woods. I think your thorough interview and intake will help you distinguish between culture, personality, or migration issues. It's so important to really ask key questions about the immigration process. We have a whole section in the training that addresses immigration and how that impacts mental health. When I first immigrated to the United States, I was 9 years old. I didn't speak a word of English, and everything seemed so foreign and weird to me. Before the war in Afghanistan, I was a very confident and bossy little girl. I ruled my school and literally had to rule my class after my teacher was taken away by the Russians and we were left without a teacher for a day. But once I came to the United States, I became extremely shy. I couldn't speak in class without turning bright red. I became very soft-spoken and quiet, which was so not me. I loved to talk and was the first to be told to be quiet because I was so loud. The immigration process really changed me and impacted my life in drastic ways. It took me several years to feel confident and comfortable in school again. I'm sure that process could have been cut down drastically if someone took the time to know more about me and my experience. So focus on your detailed interview and ask specific questions related to migration. So in the interest of time, I will stop there with the questions, but feel free to reach out to me and contact me in the future. I just want to remind you again to take advantage of this opportunity to join me for my training program. This is the most comprehensive training you will get anywhere, all from the comfort of your own home. You can research all of this information on your own. Learning for free is an option, but you end up spending so much time going through website after website and not sure if the information is correct or not. As I mentioned before, many Islamophobic sites are posing as legitimate educational sites and misleading people about Islam and creating unnecessary fear about Muslims. All it takes to destroy your relationship with your Muslim patients or clients is to unintentionally make an Islamophobic comment or say something that is insensitive or considered a put down. So yes, you do have the option to learn on your own, or you can join me and get this training with me where I hold your hand and guide you by cutting through all the unnecessary information and give you the basics you need to build a great working relationship with your Muslim patients. You will feel more confident and competent in your service delivery with Muslims. Now is the time to take advantage of this opportunity and invest in your skills, expand your practice, and diversify your client base. You will create amazing opportunities for growth in your practice by reaching out to the Muslim community and offering your services. Go to drsekandari.mykajabi.com/masterclass and sign up today. I'll see you inside the Culturally Competent Service Delivery with Muslims program. I look forward to seeing you in the class. See you soon.